Let's talk about Kyle Kulinski. Kyle Kulinski is a really interesting character. He has a lot of influence on YouTube, and it's because of that I feel like his responses to this survey were incredibly problematic when I first watched this. So let's watch this video, and I want to explain to you why I don't agree with Kyle Kulinski's fundamental beliefs about how society should be run. Even though I agree with a lot of the things he has to say on YouTube, I disagree with his motivations, and I think his motivations are problematic because he has so much influence with his beliefs. He seems like someone that a lot of people would fundamentally just agree with because he has a lot of good things to say. But every once in a while, you get this side of him where you can see his true colors. Now, if you want to see his complete true colors, I think this test is pretty much spot on. You'll know exactly who you're watching if you look at their responses to this test here. So let's watch this video and then we'll talk about it.
Here we go. Reforming capitalist society to achieve... Question 1 of 72. Reforming capitalist society to achieve better rights for workers is desirable.
So real quick, before I show you his response, he has to agree with this because he's a social democrat. He self-identifies as a social democrat. If you watch Kyle Kulinski long enough, you'll see those videos where he mentions that he's a social democrat. If you're a social democrat, then you do not believe in socialism. You do not believe in revolution. You believe in reforming capitalist society to achieve better rights for workers. So he's going to strongly agree with this. He has to.
Yeah, of course. Strongly agree with that.
I disagree with this. What's the alternative? The alternative is right here. Here's your alternative. Now, why is that a better alternative? Well, simply put, it's because look at every socialist country that exists today. Look how happy those societies are. And you tell me, did they reform capitalism or did they go through a revolution? What about that Russian Revolution? What about that Chinese Revolution? What about all the revolutions in Cuba, Venezuela, Syria, so forth? He's going to have to disagree with this.
Revolution is the best way of achieving a socialist society. I think we would lose a revolution because we don't have the power, we don't have the money, we don't have the guns.
Is that what they all said in all of those countries that were socialist, that are socialist still? Every country that's converted to socialism has stayed socialist. You only go further left. You don't retract yourself. And you might have little bits and pieces where you pull your country to the right a little bit because you move to the left too fast, for example. And that has happened historically. But so far, pretty much every country that has converted to socialism has proven that revolution is the best way of achieving a socialist society. They've proven that because it works, and it still works, and it still works.
So we would lose, and I think we would lose rather quickly and decisively, so I disagree.
See, that was a bullshit, nonsense, made-up excuse because he is a social democrat. He has to disagree with that. He put himself in that box, and so now he has to be consistent with that.
The negative consequences of a revolution generally outweigh the advantages.
Let's see what his answer is. Again, he doesn't agree with revolutions, so...
I mean, yeah, I kind of agree. I think we would lose. Liberal democracy is a viable way of achieving a socialist society.
Oh gosh, please. Please, please, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to achieve our goals is to sort of like do a hostile takeover of the current system and the institutions and the structures. You know?
Okay.
So you can't do the burn it all down approach because in the burn it all down approach, again, we don't have the money, we don't have the weapons.
You don't, but here's the thing. You don't need the money, you don't need the weapons, you just need the people, Kyle. You just need the people. And the people are there. We're all here. We're all looking at all the other socialist countries and realizing, hey, they're doing it successfully and we're just getting spewed propaganda about those countries. You think you understand North Korea, China, Russia? You think you understand that from the mainstream media outlets in the U.S.? Think again.
And I think as a matter of principle, you should only use defensive violence. I'm a deep believer in, political nonviolence to use that as much as possible. I only believe in violence for self-defense. So liberal democracy is a viable way of achieving a socialist society. Yeah, I mean, it's the least bad of all bad options.
We tried that twice. We tried running Bernie Sanders, who was the least socialist person you could run. He's hardly a socialist, if that. And he failed Twice. Why did he fail? Kyle knows exactly why he failed. It's not because the people disagree with Bernie Sanders. It's not because the country isn't there yet. It's because liberal democracy fails.
A socialist revolution is made inevitable by the conditions of capitalism. Inevitable is a strong word. Because I think we have a lot of distractions that sort of prevent anything like that from ever happening. So it's definitely not inevitable.
But it is. But capitalism increases inequality. It fundamentally increases inequality. There are no reforms that have shifted that direction of inequality that we're going in right now. So you tell me, what's post-capitalism supposed to lead to?
I'm just going to go neutral on this one. Workplace democracy within capitalism is an acceptable alternative to a complete socialization of the economy.
So within capitalism, I bet you he's going to agree with this, and I'm going to tell you why Kyle Kulinski is wrong, but I bet you he's going to agree with this.
Yeah, I sort of agree with that.
Okay, but let me explain why that's wrong. Let's back up for a minute here. So workplace democracy within capitalism. Here's the problem why that will always fail. Private industries in capitalism seek to maximize profits, right? They want to maximize profits. Workplace democracies seek to maximize the happiness of the workers. So you tell me which one is going to be able to compete in a capitalist society, the one where profits or money is the determining factor of how far you get in society. How can a workplace democracy succeed? There's a reason why we don't have worker co-ops that are successful monopolies in the US. It's because they can't compete with the actual monopolies in the US. The actual monopolies seek to make profits, and they do. But they do so by exploiting their workers. And so this is the whole thing about slavery. These kind of arguments were made when people were trying to defend slavery. There were a lot of slave owners who said, listen, if you don't agree with slavery, then just don't have slaves. Just do your business. Let me have my slaves, and you can do whatever you want. If you want to be a good person, you can just not have slaves. But then what happens? Well, you have a farm where there are slaves, and then you have a farm where there are no slaves. Which one's more profitable? Which one's going to outcompete the other one? Of course, slavery is more economically efficient for the slave owners. And so, of course, a private industry run by a CEO is going to be more profitable than a workplace democracy. And so, of course, a workplace democracy can't compete within capitalism.
Alternative to a complete socialization of the economy. Yeah, I sort of agree with that. Revolution.
Sort of. Why? Why, Kyle?
Revolutionary violence is acceptable as long as the final outcome is positive. No.
Ooh, that's a trick question. So long as the final outcome is positive. You see, I'm a utilitarian, which means that I'm a consequentialist, which means that I only care if the consequence, the final result, is positive or negative. I don't care about your intentions. If you lie or do something, but at the end result, it's all good, then the end result is good. Good. I don't really care about your intentions or where you came from or what your purpose was. I don't care. FDR, for example, did he want to pass the New Deal? Hell no. He was forced to pass the New Deal. So his intentions were not to pass the New Deal, but I don't care about his intentions because he passed the New Deal. And so the outcome is the only thing I care about.
The ends do not justify the means.
No, don't say that. Don't fucking say that, Kyle. You're pissing off so many people by saying that. Don't say that, Kyle. The ends justify the means, just so that everyone knows.
You should be against violence in a principled way. Redistributing wealth.
You should be against violence in a principled way. What does that mean, Kyle? You can be violent and not hurt people. Did you know that? You can be violent and not hurt people. You can take people's shit without hurting them. It's actually not that hard. It's actually not that hard because a lot of other countries have already proven that they can do this. They can take people's shit without hurting them.
Away from the wealthy through taxes is a viable way of defeating inequality. Yeah, that's true. Modern social democracy is a betrayal of left-wing values. Not at all.
He's not going to strongly disagree with this after self-identifying as a social democrat. You're just going to disagree?
I think it's so far the best embodiment of left-wing values in the world, and those systems function really well.
If it's the best embodiment, then why are you just disagreeing? It makes it seem like you're not completely there with your own belief there. Why not, Kyle?
Oppressed peoples have the right to engage in a violent uprising when all other options have been exhausted. Let me just lower this a little bit. It's big. Oppressed peoples have a right to engage in a violent uprising when all other options have been exhausted. Like I said, I believe in political nonviolence as much as possible. I only think you should use violence for self-defense. So if it's not in self-defense, I think it's generally immoral. So,
according to Martin Luther King, riots are just the language of the unspoken, of the unheard. And so, but at the same time, riots involve violence, but they don't necessarily have to involve hurting people. You can break windows of a bank, for example, and then go in there and just start taking a bank if you get enough people to say, hey, let's give our middle finger to these banks and let's not hurt people. And if they want to hurt us, then they can. But we're going to peacefully break into a bank. Like, what do you do about that, Kyle? What if people want to do that? What if people really get pissed off at like JP Morgan and they say, listen, we need to take their wealth? What do you do then?
So I'll put neutral here. Like, yeah, if you're oppressed and you've been oppressed for a really long time and there's like a sort of like systemic, baked into the cake kind of violence occurring against you on a regular basis, then yeah, I guess you can make some sort of argument that it is an act of self-defense to rise up against the oppression.
Yeah, but I mean, most revolutionary socialists think that we're only acting in self-defense when we conduct violence. So it's really confused. Kyle Kulinski seems to be confused here.
But again, as I stated before, I just think that we're in a position where it wouldn't work. We don't have the numbers, we don't have the money, we don't have the weapons.
You don't need those things, you just need people. You just need the people. And if you want proof of that, look at every single socialist country that exists today. North Korea, China, Russia, Vietnam, Cuba, Venezuela, Syria. I mean, Yemen in many ways is getting there now. So
you would get defeated immediately. So it's kind of like, I think it's almost like a silly notion in a way. Like we have no choice but to
That's historically ignorant. So he's not attending to history in any way here. He's just kind of going off the cuff.
Incredibly strategic about how to reach a society where we have our goals met. And it's almost like the revolution idea is like throw theory out the window and let's just sort of like rage quit and try to use violence. And it's like,
that disregard there is really insulting, to be honest. Like, revolutionaries know what they're doing, know what they're talking about. And the thing is, Kyle, you're the one who sounds confused.
Like, that's obviously not going to work, and it's also, I think, immoral and unethical and wrong on principle, because, again, the only time I think you should use violence is for self-defense. So let me read this one more time.
But every revolutionary would argue that every violent action that they make is out of self-defense. So in many ways, you would agree with the revolutionaries, yet on paper, you disagree with them, which is stupid.
Oppressed peoples have the right to engage in a violent uprising when all other options have been exhausted. I guess I gotta go neutral because the all other options line makes me feel like
contradicting like what he said earlier.
We already tried everything else, and now everything is still screwed, and it's not getting better. So what do you want us to do? I mean, I guess you'd be within your rights to do like a violent uprising at that time, but again, it's not going to work, so it's probably not a good idea. So maybe you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, maybe instead you should just keep being oppressed. What the fuck? This is called self-defense. This is your self-defense question right here. If you are being oppressed, do you defend yourself? Yes or no?
You need to try to find a strategic other way. I'm just going to hit neutral. The means of production, such as factories and farms, must be publicly owned. Factories and farms?
This is a good question.
I don't think all factories and all farms need to be publicly owned. No, not all of them. I think we should have more worker-owned co-ops. I think we should have more workplace democracy. But I wouldn't, ban the idea of any private farms or factories. I think.
But if you do that, then those private farms and factories are going to outcompete the workplace democracies because, again, workplace democracies don't seek to maximize profits, which is the driving force of a capitalist society. A workplace democracy seeks to maximize the happiness of its workers, which is a great thing, by the way. It's a very good thing. Don't get me wrong, but it just can't compete within a capitalist society. How did we solve the slave problem, right? We banned slavery. If you want to get rid of the capitalist problem, you ban capitalism. You force workplace democracies.
That goes too far. The means of production must be publicly owned. No, I disagree with that. Material conditions and needs are the dominant drive behind socioeconomic changes. Yeah, I think that's true. Socialism can only be fully achieved in developed, industrialized societies. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm just gonna put neutral.
I mean, this is the thing about these questions is a lot of them are objective questions. If you look at history, you can answer these questions on a test, on a political test, and you can get an A or an F. There is a right or wrong answer to this question, and the answer is strongly disagree because there are plenty of examples of countries that are underdeveloped but are socialist. If you want an example, look at Vietnam.
Only be fully achieved in developed, industrialized
Look
societies.
at
Cuba. I don't know. I'm just going to put neutral. I genuinely don't know. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need is a good principle. I disagree.
No, he's not going to do that. No, he's not. What part do you disagree with? There are only two claims here. There are two claims being made. This is from Karl Marx. There are two claims. So the first claim is that if you have an ability, you should give that ability. That one. If you're a mathematician, you shouldn't be a farmer, okay? From each their abilities, not the ones that you force them on. Their abilities. So do you not agree with that? The second claim that's made is to each his needs. So that means that if you need something, that you should have it. So, which of those things do you disagree with, Kyle? Let's see.
I actually tend to believe more in meritocracy, hierarchy, and competition compared to your average leftist.
So what he's saying is that if you can't get your needs with your abilities, then you should just die. You should just not get your needs and die. Holy shit, Kyle, that's crazy.
I think that sometimes you need competition, sometimes you need meritocracy, and sometimes you need hierarchy. I think hierarchy is not inherently illegitimate, whereas there are many people on the left who seem to believe that, hierarchy is almost always wrong and always oppressive.
I don't think hierarchy is always wrong. But that's not what this question is about. This question is about, do you agree that if you have the ability, you should give it, and that if you have a need, you should get it? That's what this question is about.
I simply don't believe that. I think there are instances of hierarchy that are justifiable and that actually make perfect sense. So I think that sets me apart a little more from
Socialists,
a lot of other leftists, and that's why
a lot of other leftists from Socialism, Karl Marx, Marxism.
We tried to be open and honest with you guys and tell you guys I viewed myself as more of a social democrat than just a flat-out socialist. Let me read this again. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need is a good principle. I just disagree with that.
What the fuck, dude? I just disagree with that. What? You can't just say I believe in a hierarchy and then claim disagree. Wow.
It is possible to peacefully convince the ruling class to conform to a socialist society. depends what you mean by peacefully, right? Like,
not
you're not going to
people.
talk them into it, but you don't have to talk them into it. You just get the governing majority and then, like, pass higher taxes on them. And
you mean the people. You mean the people. You just said it. You just said it. You just said you just need the people, the governing body, the people. You fucking just said it. You just said it, Kyle. That's exactly right. Let's hear that again.
You just get the governing majority and then, like, pass higher taxes on them and pass universal health care. And it doesn't fucking much matter how they feel about it.
Yes!
You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to convince them. You just need to do the things that you have to do. It is possible to...
And those things don't have to involve money, guns, and... It just involves people, the governing body, the people.
Peacefully convince the ruling class to conform to a socialist society. No, you can't. Capitalism will induce its own demise through...
Wait, did he dis... Why doesn't he just strongly disagree with that? Like, why is he only, like, sticking around agree, neutral, disagree? It sounds like he doesn't agree. He's not, like, solidified in his beliefs, which means that he's still thinking whether or not his beliefs are correct.
Capitalism will induce its own demise through contradictions that result in crisis. I mean, yeah, I think Marx was right about this. I think he's pretty much spot on. Like, yeah, capitalism will induce its own demise through contradictions that result in crisis. Pretty much. Yeah, capitalism left on its own is sort of abysmal.
Yeah, and I mean, so he's a social democrat, so he thinks that you can just reform capitalism. But if you reform capitalism, then what you're left with is capitalism. Reformed. It's still capitalism. Still capitalism.
Class conflict is a force that has influenced much of human history. Yeah, I think that's undeniable.
Why do you agree and not strongly agree with that? Like, that's not even close to a...
The establishment of socialism is a gradual process rather than an instant or rapid one. Yeah, I think that you're more likely to have success with a gradual process, and you're going to immediately fail with an instant or rapid process. So,
do you know what that's called, Kyle? It's called incrementalism, and you criticized that early on in your show.
I agree with that. Society is chiefly driven by individuals and ideas. I mean, I both agree with that and disagree with that. Like, yes, it is driven by individuals and ideas, but it's also driven by the community.
You mean the individuals collectively? I mean, yeah, this question is kind of weird, but...
And actions, not necessarily ideas. So society is chiefly driven by individuals and ideas.
Okay, that's a good response.
To some extent, yes. To some extent, no. I got to go neutral.
That's
Total
fair.
economic and social equality is realistically possible to achieve. Total economic and social equality?
Total.
No, I don't think that's... Total is impossible.
Okay, he disagreed with that. That's good.
An economy is generally designed better...
Wait, hold on. Let me... Total economic and social equality. Yeah, I don't see that being a possibility.
Total economic and social equality? No, I don't think that's... Total is impossible. An economy is generally designed better when it is organized bottom up rather than top down. Yeah, I think generally speaking, bottom up is better than top down, but actually not always.
I didn't expect this one at all. I did not expect this one. Let's see this trickle-down economic nonsense right here.
Believe it or not, but generally speaking, yes. Local plan...
Oh, he's not going to explain it. Generally speaking, yes. When does trickle-down economics work, Kyle? Come on, answer that question.
Planners, rather than national planners, are more efficient at running a planned economy. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Like,
Good
again,
answer.
This is one of those things where, like, sometimes I want the national government to do something. Sometimes I want that to happen at more of a local level or state level. So
I think that's a fair
neutral.
answer. I agree with that.
A centrally planned economy based around computers is a concept worth investigating.
Do you
I kind of
trust the
disagree with that.
computers? No, come on, no, please don't.
And I don't even want a totally centrally planned economy. Only certain things centrally planned.
Damn.
In underdeveloped societies, a centrally planned
Computers are a lot smarter than people. I'm just saying.
economy is the best way to make rapid progress. Disagree with that. I mean,
what's the alternative?
in some ways it'll help, in some ways it wouldn't. It would actually be worse. I'm just going to disagree. The principle
Worse than... I hate that he just has these half answers.
of workplace democracy and self-management are desirable. Yeah, I agree with that. The state can be best defined as a monopoly on violence and oppression. I mean, in some ways, yes, the state does have a monopoly on violence. That's true. They could legally use violence in a way that, individual citizens cannot. But a monopoly on oppression, no, not necessarily. There's many ways to be oppressed. State can best be defined as a monopoly on violence and oppression.
It's a good answer so far.
No, I don't. That doesn't ring totally true to me. That doesn't ring totally true to me.
I would have done neutral there. I would have gone neutral.
Decentralized planned economy is not socialism, but rather state capitalism. Highly centralized planned economy. A highly centralized planned economy.
My answer to this is it depends on how that planned economy works. Because socialism and state capitalism, people confound these two quite a bit. If you don't know what state capitalism is, look it up and read it, and it will sound a lot like socialism in many ways. You should be able to distinguish between state capitalism and socialism. If you can't do that, then you don't know what socialism is yet.
Is not socialism, but state capitalism. I don't know. A highly centralized planned economy. So that's like...
My answer right now is unsure, neutral, because it just depends on how you plan it.
If the federal government in the United States ran every single industry and set wages for everybody and stuff like that, and they're saying that's not socialism, but that's state capitalism. I actually simply don't know how I would define that kind of a system, so I'm just going to go neutral/unsure. I don't know the best way to label that system, or the most accurate way to label that system.
That's fair.
Bureaucracy and inefficiency are always inherent in centrally planned economies. Bureaucracy and inefficiency are always inherent in centrally planned economies. I mean, I think bureaucracy and inefficiency exist in probably every system. And
Good
is
answer.
It worse in a centrally planned economy? I honestly don't know if it's better or worse. It might just be part of being human, that all of our institutions have some degree of bureaucracy and inefficiency.
Okay, that's good.
Bureaucracy and inefficiency are always inherent in centrally planned economies. I won't say it's inherent, no. You can run the government in a way that has not as much bureaucracy and not as much inefficiency.
But you just gave an explanation as to why bureaucracy and inefficiency is inherent in everything. So you would say agree.
It's possible to do that. It is necessary to establish a dictatorship of the proletariat as a transitionary stage between capitalism and socialism.
This was something that most Marxists agree with.
No. The government should
Why?
be capable of assigning individuals to workplaces. No.
It's not capable of having any work? What do you think about the USPS? What do you think about, any social institution? Medicare, Medicaid. Government should be capable of assigning individuals to workplaces. Yes, we should definitely be capable of that. We need to do that in order to run Medicaid and Medicare and everything.
Capable of assigning individuals to workplaces. No.
Yikes.
A world socialist republic is a realistic
cringe.
and desirable goal. No.
No, globalism.
I see. This is what I mean. I'm more of I believe in the concept of a nation state more than a lot of leftists. I don't believe global government is possible or ever going to happen or even desirable.
Well, then maybe you should look at how other countries view this. So check out this survey from YouGov right here. The question is, globalization is the word used to describe the increased movement of production, ideas, money, jobs, culture, and people around the world. Overall, do you think globalization is a force for good or bad in the world? Great Britain, only 46% say yes. France, 37%. Finland, 56%. Denmark, 68%. 49% for Norway. Sweden is 63%. Germany, 60%. Europe, it's around 60%. Now let's go over to the socialist countries. Well, Hong Kong's not socialist yet. 63%. Indonesia, 72%. Malaysia, 73%. Philippines, 85%. Singapore, 71%. Thailand, 76%, which is about to convert to socialism as well. Vietnam, 91%. US, 40%. Kyle is with this 40% here. India, 83%. United Arab Emirates, 69%, and Saudi Arabia is 48%. So think of it this way. Kyle Kulinski agrees with Saudi Arabia and the U.S. Those aren't really good countries to agree with right now. I would say that the rest of the world has something to say about globalism.
Nationalism and patriotism are impulses that are unacceptable in a socialist society. No, I disagree with that. Nation states, I don't think, are inherently illegitimate or evil. You can have nation states and they can act but in a benign way. Like, to have a nation state is just to acknowledge that there needs to be planning that occurs on various levels of human society when you hit certain thresholds of population numbers.
This is a good
answer. You know what I'm saying?
Like,
the fact that you have a town, is like it inherently oppressive that you have a town or that you live in like a village or that you live in a city? No, it's just a descriptor of an area where a certain number of people live, right? And you organize in that area. And by the same token, a nation state could be the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, this is just how we organize this area for governing purposes. So
you can have your cake and eat it too. You can agree with what Kyle Kulinski is saying here and still believe in globalism. Just letting you know.
Nation states are not inherently illegitimate or inherently violent or things that need to be abolished. But a lot of lefties think that is the case, and I happen to not be one of them. I think that nation states are almost necessary to organize humanity in a way that's reasonable and that would function. Let me read this one more time. Nationalism and patriotism are impulses that are unacceptable in a socialist society. I disagree with that. The global...
Wait. Yeah, that's a good answer.
I disagree with that.
I would strongly disagree with that.
The global socialist movement should be led by a single party organization. No, I disagree with that. Foreign officials have no right to dictate policy in another country. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Open borders between like-minded socialist countries is desirable.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Open borders between everyone is desirable because, I mean, China has 1.4 billion people and they have a smaller square mile area than the U.S. So we can take in over 1 billion people and we would probably still be able to succeed as a country, as a socialist country, if we were socialist.
No, like totally open borders? Damn. I actually don't mind having borders and having a reasonable humanitarian process in place.
But why do you need borders? They're gratuitous. They're not necessary. What's the purpose? Do you not like people from outside of your country coming in?
You know what I mean? Like,
no.
That is desirable to me compared to totally open borders. Open borders between like-minded socialist countries is desirable. I disagree.
Why?
Any socialist country should be dedicated to exporting their ideology abroad. Disagree.
I think we should be dedicated to exporting socialist ideologies because that's exactly what socialist countries do just by being socialist. I mean, look at China. China is about to surpass the US in GDP. They've been growing at a rate 5 times faster than the US. That's categorically different. They're growing massively quickly. They're growing quickly. And people see that, like Hong Kong sees that, Thailand sees that, and they want to be a part of that, even though that after the Chinese Revolution, they were granted sovereignty. They still look at that and they say, wow, look at that influence that they have. I like what they have. I want that. That's desirable, yes.
People of similar cultures should unite in federations or confederations. No, what is this? Apparently, whatever part this is like I'm going to be 100% on one side or the other. The international...
No, you're not, because you keep either saying agree or disagree. You never touch the strongly agree or strongly disagree. And I think you're doing that to force yourself to be a centrist.
Proletariat belongs to no country. I mean, I guess I agree with that.
I guess.
Like-minded people living in a bunch of different places. National liberation or self-determination for all peoples is a good concept. Yeah, I agree with that. I would be willing to sacrifice my economic resources in my home country in order to help other countries. Yes and no. Like, first I want to take care of this country. Like, is that crazy? That
no.
First, like, if I'm electing politicians in the United States of America, I want the politicians to represent me in the United States of America. That's not unreasonable, and that's what every country would expect of their leaders. I would be willing to sacrifice economic resources in my home country in order to help other countries. I mean, in some instances, yes, like if somebody's starving in another country, yeah, I want to stop them from starving, and I'd be willing to pay for that. But, you know, I also would generally prefer to take care of our country first, if that makes sense, right? So
that makes sense.
I'd be willing to sacrifice economic resources in my home country.
I think he's coming with good intentions here.
I gotta go neutral. Let me just go neutral. Socialist political parties should participate in liberal democratic elections.
I think his answer should have been strongly agree, because he's just gave a scenario where he would be willing to sacrifice economic resources in his home country in order to help other countries. He just gave an example of why you like if someone's starving, then you should feed them. So strongly agree. I would be willing. Yes.
Neutral. Socialist political parties should participate in liberal democratic elections. Of course. Trade unions and workers' councils should form the basis of a socialist society. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. The leadership of political parties in the progression towards socialism will always lead to authoritarianism. No. Democratic...
That's a good answer.
Centralism is an authoritarian organizational structure that disregards the masses. Democratic centralism is an authoritarian organizational structure that disregards the masses.
This is true because we have proof of it. Look at our current Democratic president who disregards the masses.
I do not know. Only a mass workers' party can achieve any meaningful long-term goals. Only a mass workers' party? No.
Oh, then who else who also do we need to include here, Kyle? Who else should be involved in that? Only a mass workers' party can achieve any meaningful long-term goals. I guess you could say no to that.
Long-term goals. Only a mass workers' party?
Only is a strong word.
Mass spontaneous actions are more effective than carefully planned actions. No.
Again, incrementalism. He doesn't like spontaneous actions. He doesn't like mass change, quick change.
The fact that so many workers vote for bourgeois parties over socialist parties is proof that party politics are no longer relevant. That's totally wrong. They're relevant whether or not you want to acknowledge it. You want to pretend like they're not relevant? Fine, but they're definitely relevant.
Yep.
Socialist organizations are generally better off when organized loosely and decentrally. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I gotta go neutral.
Okay.
Large trade unionism has been largely corrupted by the ruling class and is no longer a viable structure for a socialist organization. So it has been corrupted by the ruling class, but that doesn't mean it's no longer viable and necessary. It's still viable and necessary.
Okay, how can you say that? They don't work. They never work. They don't work. You just said they're corrupted. So are we just going to hope that they just uncorrupt themselves?
See what I'm saying? Like, yeah, it has been corrupted. So fucking uncorrupt it in the same way that we have to uncorrupt our governments. Like, that's not a thing you can afford to just throw your hands up and be like, well, I guess we got to, concede on this front. That's stupid and that's defeatism. Trade unionism has been largely corrupted by the ruling class and is no longer a viable structure for a socialist organization.
Yes.
Disagree.
What the fuck are you talking about, Kyle? Are you kidding? How do you uncorrupt it?
Corrupted by the ruling class and is no longer a viable structure for a socialist organization. Disagree.
You need to
Climate change is a major...
completely change the structure of how unions work and how companies work in general in the U.S. in order to even remotely uncorrupt trade unionism.
Class and is no longer a viable structure for a socialist organization.
Damn.
Disagree. Climate change is a major global threat that all socialists must fiercely combat. Yeah, agree.
But not strongly agree. Not strongly agree?
Measures to address environmental issues are unacceptable if they result in significant decreases in production and quality of life. Measures to address environmental issues are unacceptable if they result in significant decreases in production and quality of life. Yeah, significant decreases in quality of life. I agree. You can't do significant decreases in quality of life. You need to keep the quality of life high and also address the crisis.
Good answer.
It is foolish to expect renewable energy sources to be able to replace fossil fuels. No.
But just disagree? Are you pro fossil fuel in any way, Kyle?
Industrialized farming practices must be abolished even if it leads to lower outputs.
That's a good
question. I gotta go
neutral
because we need to be able to feed everybody. Like, we need industrialized farms, but they need to clean up their act.
Good answer.
So, hold on, let me read this again. Industrialized farming practices must be abolished, even if it leads to lower outputs. I gotta disagree with that.
I think he should have put neutral or unsure based on his answer, based on his reasoning.
It will be important to implement extensive environmental protections as part of achieving socialism. It will be important to implement extensive environmental protections as part of achieving socialism.
Agree or so? Yeah, there we go.
Experimental, environmentally friendly food sources like cultured meat are worth investing in. Yeah, I guess. That makes sense.
I guess. Yeah,
personal motor vehicles such as cars should be replaced with free public transport. Replaced? No.
But why not? Why not just make a bunch of free public transportation everywhere so that you don't need a car ever? You could just immediately get to wherever you want quickly because we have free public transportation. Yeah, the bus systems work, or the bus systems in the U.S. suck. Okay, I'm in LA and it still sucks. That doesn't mean that public transportation is a failed model. If you want to look at public transportation, how successful it can be, look at China. I mean, any socialist country will value public transportation heavily, and so people will buy less cars. Buying cars is a bad thing unless they're electric.
You could do better public transportation, but not like ban personal, individual transportation.
But that's not what this question is asking for, because we can have personalized transportation methods. Like, for example, we can turn all of the Tesla cars into a free Lyft service so that you can just get any self-driving electric car and that'll take you directly to your destination. But it's still free public transportation. So you can have your cake and eat it too.
It is acceptable for humanity to suffer to some notable extent in order to preserve the natural ecosystem. Suffer? That's a weird word to use. No, disagree. In order to preserve...
I have to read this again. It is acceptable for humanity to suffer to some notable extent in order to preserve the natural ecosystem. I mean, we have to. In order to preserve the natural ecosystem. We can't just keep doing what we're doing.
The natural ecosystem. Suffer? That's a weird word to use. No, disagree. We must radically preserve the natural ecosystem. Suffer? That's a weird word to use.
Okay, but his reasoning is okay. I'm okay with his reasoning. I'm not going to criticize him there.
No, disagree. We must radically alter our food consumption in order to limit the exploitation of nature.
Alter?
Yeah, we need to alter our food consumption for sure in order to stop exploiting nature. That is true.
Okay, good.
Human population growth must be curbed to prevent an ecological disaster. No, it's very Malthusian. Some
why just disagree? Why not strongly disagree?
Is acceptable if it notably benefits humanity. Yeah, destruction.
I interrupted him.
No, it's very Malthusian. Some small-scale destruction of nature is acceptable if it notably benefits humanity. Yeah, small-scale destruction of nature? Yes. You could do small-scale things if it really benefits humanity.
Yeah, I agree.
Humanity must return to the primitive ways of the past to overcome long-term climate issues. Disagree. We must accept that the socialist states of the 20th century failed to seriously address environmental issues. Did they? I don't know if they did.
It's a good response.
The oppression of LGBTQ plus people is a major issue that needs to be seriously addressed. Yes. Traditional gender roles such as women being homemakers need to be overcome. Yeah, I think that women should be able to do whatever they want to do.
Good answers.
Marriage is a patriarchal social construct that should be phased out. No, I disagree with that.
Damn it. Come on, Kyle. Come on, be a feminist. Come on, Kyle.
If marriage is something that people want to do, let them do it. I don't see the big deal. Abortion is an immoral act that should be banned or significantly limited. Disagree. Religions overall have a mostly positive effect and should remain influential in society. I disagree.
Not strongly disagree. Secular talk.
That had negative effects too. Minority population should receive special legal protection. Special legal protection? They should be legally protected, of course, but special legal protection? Oh, I guess they're trying to say, like, protected classes, like in the Civil Rights Act. Yeah, I agree with that. A socialist government has no right to disrupt religious or cultural traditions in any situation. A socialist government has no right to disrupt religious or cultural traditions in any situation.
Any.
No, I disagree with that, because if it's in a situation where, like, ultra-Orthodox Jewish rabbis are sucking off the tips of baby dicks as they fucking do in circumcision ceremonies, then yeah, I want the government to stop that, of course. Like spreading herpes to like little kids and then they die. I've covered these stories. It's insane.
Yeah, it is.
Prisons are oppressive and antiquated institutions that need to be abolished. Sorry, guys, I disagree with that.
Really? You like the concept of prison? Why? Again, Kyle Kulinski's not a utilitarian, and so he doesn't really care about the concept of gratuitous punishment. Prisons are gratuitous punishment. They don't help society. They don't protect society. They don't do anything productive. Prisons are feudalist little organizations where slavery is exploited. So it's a feudal society.
I think that for violent crime
comes from people who need to be restrained, but they also deserve, like, you know, internet, TV, food, really good food, really clean water, all that stuff. Like you can give people everything that they need, and you can extract from their abilities, according to Karl Marx, and not have a prison and still be safe.
Prisons can exist. If somebody commits a quadruple murder and then rapes the dead body,
you restrain
and shows
them.
No signs of any sort of rehabilitation, what do you want to do with that person?
Restrain them, but give them everything that we can to make them still be able to live a human life.
Not put them in prison?
Yeah.
I just think that's so utopian and silly, honestly.
It's so utopian. It's so silly. Wow, you're insulting, Kyle.
Prisons are oppressive and antiquated institutions that need to be abolished. Disagree. Policies that enable mass immigration are naive and should not be implemented. Yeah, I generally agree with that.
Why?
You cannot achieve a socialist society without also making significant social progress. Yeah, that sounds true.
Okay,
let's see.
Oh. Yeah, he's a reformist. That's definitely true. Okay. He's definitely... Yeah, this looks...
72.1% on the side of reform, only 27.9% on the side of revolution. For science, I'm 60.9% on the side of science and 39.1% on the side of utopian. For the government, I'm 40% in favor of having a centralized government and 60% in favor of having a decentralized government. So I have like a very neutral view on where government should be centralized.
Most people
for nation state, I'm I believe 60.7% I believe in the nation state, and only 39.3% international.
That lines up with what the U.S. and Saudi Arabia says. Okay, Kyle.
I'm apparently neutral when it comes to party versus union. I'm 53.8% on the side of party politics, 46.2% on the side of union politics. I'm neutral when it comes to production versus nature, 55% on the side of production, 54% on the side of production.
And you don't find that concerning, Kyle? We should be working towards solving global warming.
45%, 46% on the side of nature. I'm 60.3% progressive and 39.7% conservative. So they say my closest match is centrist Marxism.
Yeah, because you picked agree and disagree on everything that you should have picked strongly agree versus strongly disagree on. You didn't want to touch the extreme ends of the political spectrum because you're nervous. And so, of course, you're going to be put into a centrist something.
So funny.
That's a funny laugh. I like it.
Centrist Marxism is a form of Marxism that adopts Marxist views on society and the economy while also refraining from taking a definitive position on revolution and reformism. Many centrist Marxists may also be more nationalistic than other Marxists.
Yeah, I would say he lines up more with social democracy, which is 86.6% match. That's the next closest match. And even that, like that number is pretty small. And the reason it's small is because he didn't really answer in the way that he would speak. He would agree when he would need to strongly agree. He would disagree when he should strongly disagree. Like, I think if he was more consistent with what he was actually saying out loud in his reasonings, I think he would probably be a social democrat. And the thing is, he self-identifies as a social democrat. He works backwards from that conclusion, and he ends up contradicting himself in places. And this is the thing about capitalists, is that people who are capitalists, they like socialism in many ways. And by doing so, they find some way to contradict themselves here and there. And so you saw the contradictions. I showed them to you.
And then, so let's see my next closest matches. This is interesting. With your closest match as 100% and farthest as 0%, here's how you match with other ideologies. What percentage was I of? It doesn't say the percentage of centrist Marxism that
I wish it did. That'd be nice.
86.6% believe in social democracy. Social democracy is a center-left ideology that advocates for mixing left-leaning values such as social welfare and corporate regulation with capitalism and liberal democracy in the form of a mixed economy. Many modern social democracies favor Keynesian economics.
Even fascists can advocate a mixed economy with the principal goal of achieving autarky, national economic self-sufficiency, through protectionist and economic interventionist policies. Kyle, maybe you should read this Wikipedia article, specifically that line, Kyle. That was interesting. It's really unfortunate that Kyle Kulinski isn't an eco-Marxist. That's what I am. 19.8%. He's not an eco-Marxist. That sucks.